Hey guys, quick lesson today. You're going to need a ruler that has an inch and a centimeter side to it. So pause it if you need to and grab one of those because you will need that for our lesson today. So pause it and come back when you're ready with the ruler with the inch on one side and centimeters on the other side. Okay, first off, this is a little bit of geometry. One of the genius parts about Saxon is that you don't take, well, in the good Saxon, the old Saxons, not the new ones, you don't take some separate year of geometry like all the other poor kids in public schools do. Geometry is just mixed into all the different years, and it's not like something separate. So thank Mom and Dad for choosing Saxon for you. Okay, lines, segments, and rays. A line, it looks like this. It's represented by this in geometry. The arrows mean that it goes on in an infinite, it never stops. There is no such thing as a real line, because it would go infinitely in directions. In fact, a line doesn't even really have any real width. It just is there. That's one of the three unknowns they call in geometry. That's a line. And they'll name lines, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. A segment means something like this. It just stops. It has two endpoints. This is one endpoint. Sometimes they'll put a little dot there to show that's an endpoint. There's an endpoint, there's another endpoint. This will have an actual length. In other words, you'll be able to measure this, which is what we're going to do in just a minute. That's what a segment is. A ray looks like this. It's like between a segment and a line. It has an endpoint, but it goes on infinitely far in one direction. And we'll talk more about naming those and all that kind of jazz later on. Okay, two things you need to know. You probably have heard this. I'm sure you know about this. It's funny. When I was a kid, the teachers, this is during the 1970s, and I was in elementary school, and the teachers were like, kids, any day now, the United States will be changing to the metric system. We're like, Of course, that's been like 45 years or whatever, and it still hasn't happened. So we're still using the old customary system, I guess the British system or something like that, if you want to call it that. But we're talking about inches, we're talking about feet, we're talking about miles, yards is 3 feet and so on. Make sure you know there's 12 inches in a foot, there's 3 feet in a yard, and you might have to write this one down. There is 5,280 feet in a mile. If you don't know that, write it down. All right, so make sure you know that. 5,280 feet in a mile. The metric system is based on 10. It was first put into, thought up and put into practice during the French Revolution, which was a complete disaster. In fact, they even tried to do, it's based on 10, like I said, and they even tried to do a 10-day work week. So people took off a lot of people took off the 10th day instead of a lot of people work 6 days and take off Sundays or work 5 and take it. People, after years, they couldn't stand it, so they had to go back. But they kept the metric system. Most of Europe uses the metric system. And basically, the meter is the unit. A meter is it's a little longer than a yard. A meter is 39.37 inches. You don't have to memorize that. Just be aware of how long it is. It's about like this long. Okay. A meter, 1,000 meters, and that's the meter. 1,000 meters is a kilometer. And those are most of the ones we deal with. Now, a meter is made up of 100 centimeters. Centa, C-E-N-T-I, like century is 100 years. A centipede has 100 feet, I guess. Anyway, and the millimeter, a centimeter is about that big. By the way, there are 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch. And a millimeter, a centimeter is like this big. A millimeter is just like this. There are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. Just make sure you know those. Those are the ones we deal with 90% of the time, or almost half. Okay, so you'll need a ruler, and what you're going to want to do is look on page 31, and basically you're going to compare inches and centimeters, and go ahead and look and estimate. You're going to look at those, and so pause it and just look and estimate. Take out your ruler and your pencil and mess around with those inches and measurements and so on, and look at those and make sure, like on your ruler, you will have, let's say this is your ruler. Let's say this is the end, and let's say here is an inch. Now, bigger than obviously it is. There are tick marks on your ruler like this, so it will be like half an inch is big. And then what you'll see is for the quarter inches, they kind of look like this. They're a little, they're not quite, well, here, let me try that again. There. That looks a little better. And then they'll go, oh, you know, an eighth of an inch looks like this. There's an eighth, there's an eighth, there's another eighth, and there's an eighth. And then, you know, keep going. There's a 16th, you know, it's a little smaller. And they make it so where you can actually count these. Now let's actually look at this and see the logic behind this. Again, this is 1 inch from here to here, right? This is a half an inch right here, right? Half an inch. So, but you could look at it if you wanted to as quarters of an inch. So if this is a quarter right here, you could go, there's 1 quarter, 2 quarters. In other words, 2/4. Well, 2/4, that's the same thing as a half, right? All right. If you want to look at it as eighths, like this is an eighth right here, that's another eighth. This is an eighth. This is an eighth. This is an eighth. You know, we're counting 8 times to get to the end of 1 inch. So here's 1/8, 2/8, and even that. Oh, look at that. 2/8. Well, that's the same thing as 1/4, right? Well, it happens to be 1/4. There we go. And if you wanted to go, oh, which one? Let's see. Which one is this right here? You go, okay, well, it's on one of these, which is an eighth. So 1, 2, 3/8. It's 3/8 of an inch, almost half an inch. And what's this right here? Well, you go, that's an eighth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7/8 and so on. So, and here's something else funny. Here, let's say you want to go right here. How many eighths is that? You would go, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 6/8. And you'd realize, wait a minute. If I just knock that down and reduce the fraction, that's 3/4. Oh, yeah, that is 3/4. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and so on. And they also do 16ths as well. I won't bother to do that, but it's the same kind of thing. If you were to do the 16ths, you would just go like these little bitty ones between there and like that. Yeah, I guess I'm doing it. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'll do it. And you could count 1 of the oh, look, there's 16ths, and you would get the same thing. But anyway, okay, let's compare inches to centimeters. Oh, that's tough to read. The centimeters side, let's say this is a centimeter. Like here's one of your things here. Let's say this is a centimeter. Well, you're going to see that there's going to be 10 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each one of these from here to here, from here to here is a millimeter. 10 millimeters give you 1 centimeter. And that's basically how it works. Okay. All right. You're going to measure, and you know what? Before you do the practice set, look at page 32 and take your ruler. And, you could, well, you don't need a ruler for this one, but how long is that line segment? Well, they have an inch. You know it's an inch because it goes past the 1. And you could look at this and go, well, boy, there aren't as many tick marks as I thought there were going to be. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks. Well, if there's 4 tick marks, that means each one of those is a 1/4, right? So the length of that line segment is 1 1/4 inches. Now look at the second one. How long is that line segment? Well, that's a centimeter. Now, if you were to look at that, you could go, well, mine, that's how long is it? If you count in centimeters, that's exactly 2 centimeters. Now, if they wanted to say millimeters, you would go, well, each one of those centimeters is 10 millimeters. So it's 20 millimeters total. So there we go. All right, pause it now and go ahead and try the practice problems and then unpause it when you're finished. So pause it. See you in a second. Okay, let's take a look at the answers. And first one is going to be 1 3/4 inches. You can see those are divided into fourths. Second, that is 25 millimeters or 2.5 centimeters, or whatever you want. C, measure this one twice, once with an inch ruler and once with a centimeter ruler. They're going to be different, aren't they? You're going to get different answers. I'm not going to say what they are, but you can look at that and measure them both ways. Just make sure. Okay, line segment array. D is array, of course. E is a line because it goes on infinitely, and F is just a segment because it is a fixed, there are dots at the very end telling you that it ends here, or begins here and ends there. So there you go. Okay, have fun with that lesson. See you next time. Do a good job today with your stuff.